Hello friends, Tanya here for Spellbinders and day 11 of the 2023 Crafty Advent Calendar. Let's open box number 11, and it looks like it is another die set. We have, it looks like some banner dies that are tough to get out of the bag. There are 4 sentiments here and a backer die. You do have to put the sentiment dies in the banner when you cut them out, and then you use the banner by itself to create the backer. This says you did it. And then we have a gift for you, just a note, and oh gosh, now I don't know what the last one said. We are also going to play with the flower market. We've got blossoming flowers and cone flowers. These are layering stencil sets that came out in November. And I did play with them a little bit before December, but I never did finish my video or the cards. So I pulled them out to play with the Advent Calendar goodies. I am starting with some Rustic Wilderness on some craft cardstock. I'm going to do all of my stenciling today on craft cardstock, and I do one version with each stencil set with Distress Oxides and one version with Distress Inks. I don't show you the stenciling for both versions, not on the craft, but you'll see lots of stenciling in this video. We're also going to do some mowed lawn here. And I really like how Distress Oxides get a nice solid inking. I should have maybe done the Rustic Wilderness over the top of the mowed lawn, so I might, next time if I did this, I might switch the order of those two. Now we're going to move on to the blossoms in the blossoming flowers. I am just lining this up. There are not etched lines per se over the images, but there are etched lines in the corners of the stencil, so you can get an A2 sized or a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock lined up in the corners with the etching there. I'm using squeezed lemonade and candied apple here, and I'm going to do some blending in the middle to get kind of a corally orange gradient in the middle. So we have 3 different colors of flowers. I'm going to clean up my stencil here a little bit because I want to come back again, or did I already come back again with the yellow? Nope, here I'm coming back with the yellow because I want to blend that just a little more on those middle flowers. Once I have that to my liking, I peel those off. I am using the Altenew Stampwheel insert. I have an extra of this sticky, it's like the photopolymer material, and it works great to hold your stencils. Next, we're going to use the Slippery When Wet Lunar paste on the final layer of this layering stencil, just using my palette knife to get it into those little spaces that will be the centers of the flowers and some little, I imagine it would be greenery normally, sticking out around the petals. It really makes a beautiful highlight on this stenciled background. Just trying to make sure I get those stenciled areas completely filled and nice and even, and trying not to scrape too vigorously over those openings so that I don't mess up the look I'm going for. Now the Lunar paste is water soluble, so it's a little less important to rush this straight to water, but I did take it directly to the sink and clean it up. The best way to get your paper off of that that photopolymer mat is to pull the mat away from the paper. You saw the Distress Oxide versus the Distress Ink version of that one. Now we're going to move on to the cone flowers. I decided to go with the larger or less detailed part of the leaves, not the veining part, and we're going to start with the mowed lawn this time. Just like I said last time, I wanted to be able to have the detail portion, the darker portion, be the second portion, because with the Distress Oxide inks, the top color is the one that's going to show through the best because they layer on top of each other. I'm cleaning my stencil a little bit before I pull it off of our paper. And then we'll move on to the details of the stems, just lining up those corner marks to get it lined up. I'm also keeping an eye on where the stencil openings are falling as I'm lining that up to make sure it all goes where it needs to be going, in case I didn't line it up perfectly with the first stencil. Just using some rustic wilderness to fill in these openings. And I really do enjoy using the sponge daubers instead of the brushes for Distress Oxides in particular. I've found my brushes just they get stiff and they don't transfer the ink very well. And the sponges on the mini ink blenders always transfer well. Next, we're going to use some Kitsch Flamingo and a little bit of picked raspberry to do the petals of the coneflowers. I'm just adding the picked raspberry a little bit towards the center to do a little blending and make these petals a little more detailed. It's pretty easy to do that. The biggest the biggest thing to watch out for is that you don't catch the pointy parts of the stencil that are creating the petals. Next, we have the actual cone part of these flowers. I'm just going to line that up, and we're going to use, that's either gathered twigs or brushed corduroy. I can't remember which, but it's a nice medium brown. And then we have some details for the cone part and over the petals. This is the layer we're going to use the Lunar paste on. And again, just going to carefully use my palette knife, or not too carefully, just thoroughly fill all of those spaces in the stencil. And carefully making sure I'm not scraping too much of the paste off of these. I really enjoy these layering stencils. They create such a beautiful background. These are sized for an A2 size card front, and these are not necessarily repeating patterns that I can convert into a 5 by 7 card. I could do a smaller die cut piece that has the floral background on it to add to a card. We'll see what I experiment with later. Then I decided I wanted to do the stenciling on the inside of the card also. I do love to stencil on the insides of my cards, and you can usually write over this pretty simply. I have an extra piece of what is that called? Acetate. Acetate sheet that's from some packaging that I keep on my desk for instances just like this, to do a little masking, especially when I'm using like this Stampwheel mat to secure my stencils. Then I can just put that acetate sheet down and it will cover the side of the card front inside that I don't want to get any ink on. This time I'm using Distress inks instead of oxides, and I'm trying to go a little lighter handed. That didn't work out so well with the browns. This might be a little more difficult to write on the inside, but we're going to give it a whirl. I can always put a piece of white cardstock on here on the inside to cover a central portion so that the stenciling just shows around the edges, but I can probably write over this anyway, or write on the other side. This just looks really fun on the inside of the card. Again, going lighter, and I decided to just use one green, even though I have two stencils that I would typically use the green on. Now we're doing some squeezed lemonade and candied apple for the blossoming flower stencil. Just doing a little bit of overlapping. This isn't sticking as well. I don't think I pushed as hard on the edges to get it nicely sealed against the photopolymer material. Then we have the centers, and instead of doing the gold or the slippery when wet Lunar paste, I'm using the green to add those little pieces around the flowers and in the centers of the flowers. You could leave it here. You wouldn't have to use the greenery. That would be a good way to make these stretch onto a 5x7 card base if you just left the greenery off, which has more of a directional feel. But if you use just the flower parts of these stencils, you could actually cover as much cardstock as you wanted and have a nice fun random pattern in there. Now I'm adding the greenery, again trying to have a lighter hand and just using the mowed lawn on this on the greenery stencils. I'm using the final layer of the leaves on this stencil set and just going over it with the same color ink, only even lighter. And that turned out really well. Now I am making 2 4-bar cards and 2 A2 size cards with these backgrounds that I created. And they are so beautiful that I decided just to add sentiments and a little bit of embellishment to the front and leave it there. I'm using I'm not using all 4. I'm using 3 of the 4 sentiments from the Advent Calendar die set for today. Of course, I've added some extra cardstock behind each of these different panels, and I'm just adhering those down. A 4-bar card is 3.5 inches by 5 inches. These matted pieces are 3 1/4 by 4 3/4 inches, and they fit very nicely on that card base. These A2 size panels, I actually trimmed these down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I wanted a little extra wide white border around these. And I'm just looking for a good spot to put our sentiment so it doesn't disrupt the pattern that we've created. I really want that stenciled background to take front seat on these cards. Here is the last of the cards. I'm going to add the sentiment down in the lower third and just tuck it in between some of these flowers, making sure it's nice and straight. And then we're going to use some of the sequins from day 9 of the Advent Calendar. These actually coordinate very nicely with the colors that I used on this on both of these cards. They have that adaptability where they're that pink that's just right for a lot of different colors. Just adding a grouping of 3. There are 2 sizes of sequins in this bag of sequins, a small and a large, and that plays well with just groupings of 3. That's all 4 of the cards that I made today. I got a little over ambitious, but I had all of these panels I wanted to use, and I think they turned out cute. Little bit of mass card producing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Check that description box below for all of the products that I used today. They will be listed and linked as always. And if the list is too long, there will also be a full visual list link that you can hit to see all of the products that I used. If you would like to leave me a comment, I love to read them. I don't always have time to respond to them, but I do read all of them. Here are a couple more videos that I thought you might enjoy, and I will be back tomorrow with the next video for the Advent Calendar. Until then, bye-bye.